Welcome to the Real Joe Show. You are going to want to stay to the end of this. We have Patrick Brooks, who is a real estate entrepreneur, podcast host, founder of the Sober Broker, which is a movement dedicated to helping professionals build successful lives and businesses through sobriety, faith, discipline, and purpose. With over a decade in real estate across Western North Carolina, Patrick combines personal transformation with leadership development, community building, and high performance habits, sharing stories of redemption, resilience, and long term success, both on and off the field. So, absolutely going to watch this entire thing. It is going to be meaty, it's going to be deep, it's going to be rich. Welcome, Patrick.
Thank you, Joe. I'm honored to be on board.
This is great. I'm excited to learn more about this. And from the surface, I know it's an extremely important trek you're on with this, with the amount of substance abuse and not just real estate, all over. Primarily, there's a lot in real estate. So this is fantastic. So what led you to even create the Sober Broker?
Yeah, so thank you again, Joe. I really appreciate being on your platform here. The Sober Broker really came out of my own collapse and rebuilding stage. I've been in real estate for, like you mentioned, over a decade or almost a decade, and in that world, alcohol is everywhere. 9 times out of 10, it's what someone gets as a closing gift. 9 times out of 10, it's what you go do once you close a deal. It's everywhere. So between the client centers, the conferences, the celebrations, it's easy to get wrapped up in that being a normal way of life. And for a long time, I thought that was just part of the grind. Thought it was just part of the business. Kind of the next steps towards getting new business is taking people out to celebrate or go grab drinks. But behind that success, I really was burning out. I became more emotionally reactive, really disconnected from my family, and honestly just really high anxiety and almost scared at times. And when I got sober, everything slowed down in the best ways. My thinking cleared, my relationships changed, my mornings have changed, and I realized, man, there are so many professionals who are quietly struggling but still showing up in suits every single day. And I realized, the closings, the units sold, obviously, what our commissions look like at the end of the year. And so starting with Sober Broker was really to break the stigma about, really what we pay attention to on the day to day. Obviously, putting food on the table and having closings and, winning clients and closing deals is a huge part of real estate. But as an entrepreneur, you have complete autonomy to be able to build your life how you want it to be.
Yeah.
And so the Sober Broker really helped me formulate something that was going to reach people where they were at, not to preach or judge or, cast any negative thing on them, but mostly just to kind of take a finer look at how you choose to live your day to day and could you live it differently. So
What was some of the
yeah.
signs that told you had to do something different?
Well, I mean, truthfully, every single time that I was faced with, high intensity moments, I always sought to run to something else because that's kind of the habits that I built, whether it be alcohol, whether it be other substances. Anytime that, like I said, was faced with adversity, I ran to something else. And after a certain time frame, of course, like I began to realize like the life that I'm building is reliant on other things to keep me where I need to be. And that's not sustainable. It's not who I am. And it certainly can't be what my future looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. When you first started this, did you notice an identity shift within yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. The identity shift was real. I mean, when you look at, kind of the side by side appearance of how I chose to live my life, I looked at it one way to where everything was, like I said, running from problems and not choosing to solve them and not dealing with things when I needed to versus whenever I was sober and I started really tackling things head on, dealing with things upright and up forth, being honest and about how I feel, but also about the situation. The identity shift really came from honestly just looking at my past and seeing where I've been versus where I am now. And the hardest part about that shift was it was truthfully just hard to let go of. I mean, it was kind of like it's like a pacifier for a baby. I hate to use that example, but at the same time, like it was there for comfort. Babies need it for, to help go to sleep, to help them make it feel comfortable in an uncomfortable situation. And I realized that's all I'm doing was recreating that as an adult. And holding on to that was hard. Letting it go was even harder. But honestly, after a certain time of being sober, being in sobriety based programs, I did Celebrate Recovery, which is basically like a Christian based AA program or NA program. It's there for basically any kind of addiction, but it's biblical based. I started reading the Bible more, and just through that transition, I was able to kind of let go of the past and really just focus on, where I was wanting my life to go and leading my life there. The identity crisis was really just learning how to cope with those things without needing anything else to help me get through it.
What kind of support did you need within the family, in your other agents and your clients? I mean, you're making a huge shift. They know you one way, and now you're approaching life in a different way. How was that support?
Yeah, so honestly, I kept it pretty quiet at first because I wasn't necessarily confident in what I was doing. I just know I needed to do it. I was transforming my life, and honestly, a lot of those things came quietly until they were loud enough for me to see them. And what I mean by that is, your confidence, your energy, your focus, your dedication to things, all that, kind of withers away when you're, abusing substances to help you stay afloat. But once you get rid of the substances and you focus on those things, your life changes, not immediately, but once you really start, getting deeper into recovery and sobriety, all those things just kind of blow up, and you start realizing, one, the time that you were wasting escaping the things that you had to deal with. And the support came after I started talking about it and being more vocal. And of course, there's support always in our sobriety groups. I did obviously the Celebrate Recovery, but I also did a step study program, which is a deep dive into like my personal history, obviously events that I faced as a child, negative interactions that I had with people that kind of changed the direction of my life, whether it be relationships, marriages, anything that may have gotten me started on, abusing substances. Those major changes, you do a deep dive and you figure out, where you were at emotionally when those things happened, where you were at physically. And through that class, through that step study program, we started off with, I believe, nine guys. And over the time of about 8 months it took for us to finish this program, this step study, we only had 4 left.
Wow.
So you can see that, like, one, it's long. You're meeting once a week. So, it's a time commitment for one, but it's an emotional commitment because, you're really doing a deep dive into, like I mentioned, events in your life and how those have helped forge who you are and what you can do today to kind of dislodge those stories that you tell yourself. Like, I am this way because of this, you know, 9 times out of 10, that's false. It's just that that's what you truly believe because that's who you think you are from that instance.
Right.
Yeah.
So all the pressures that were there when you used to drink and do whatever, they're still there. They're still coming at you. What has shifted, and how do you deal with those pressures now that you're not running into substance?
Yeah, that's a good question. Honestly, being more affiliated with just my identity in Christ is the biggest thing because I physically sometimes close my eyes and think about, what would Jesus do? How would he respond to these moments? What direction would he take this? And it's pretty clear, whenever are not sober, whenever you're induced by, alcohol, spirits, or anything else, your mind just thinks differently. Sometimes it responds to false confidence because, if you're feeling these kind of ways, sometimes, those things really take the wheel, while when you're not, well, when you are sober and you're not, messed up and focusing on all these other substances, you can think more clearly and you can really tackle those things head on with a clean emotional slate. And that's honestly, it's not just from reducing, or I'm sorry, omitting drug and alcohol use. It is all about the emotional well-being and understanding of my past. Without going through that step study program, I feel like there would be some underlying things that I would still deal with, but because I've taking the step to go through this program, speak to a therapist, and really discuss what made me me, then everything else really started to click.
If somebody were to put side by side the old Patrick and the sober Patrick, what would the differences, what would they see differently in the way you respond to pressure, fun, all that? What would they notice?
I would say that they would notice, more emotionally present Patrick, not someone who's just there to have fun and have a good time, but to really dig into, the situation. I mean, I find myself asking more questions about, how people feel about things versus, what the facts may be. Just because feeling dictates a lot. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're facts, but feelings just definitely generate, where someone is coming from internally rather than, if you're looking at something that's more factual. And so I don't think I'm any less fun than what I used to be, but I just look at things differently. And I definitely choose to be way more present in the moment and living those moments rather than just trying to escape it in some kind of way.
Now, you mentioned that faith had been a big part of your recovery. Were you heavily involved with your faith prior to that?
So I grew up in a Christian home. I grew up, going to church every Wednesday, every Sunday, and I grew up in youth group. So I was heavily integrated into church growing up. But then once I turned 18 and I went to college, that all kind of came to a halt. I stopped prioritizing it. Obviously, it's something that my parents pushed on me, but again, without because they also had, struggling with addictions in the shadows, but without them ever personally talking to me about things and allowing me to learn through their failures, I thought, church was just a blanket for, people who had no direction in life. I thought that it was kind of a way that people were able to feel good about their bad decisions just by going to church and kind of releasing that and then, going on to about the next week. But you live things once you approach life and you approach these thresholds that you have to go through, and you learn, why, people had addictions issues in the past is because, for lack of a better way to say this, life is shitty sometimes. And I'm sorry if that's
That's all
not
right.
allowed on your show, but
It's true.
it is true, and how you deal with it is everything. And so going to college and figuring out my own way, which was not the best way, but I found out a way that worked for me. And then 10 years down the road, I have addiction issues. I have, a lot of other issues that I was pushing down because drugs, alcohol, and any other substances gave me an out to be able to just kind of ignore those things and just continue on to live the life how I felt fit. But faith changed how I looked at that, changed how I ran my business. And I stopped trying to control every outcome and started viewing my work as stewardship.
I'm glad you brought up the business side of it. You certainly have a purpose in what you're doing. And most real estate agents, they identify with their production and what they're doing with the deals and how much they're closing and all that, how many families they're helping.
Yep.
Is the best way to put it. And that's the best way to think, not just put it. How do you draw the line? Are they parallel? Are they separate? Do they intertwine? How does your purpose and your productivity work together?
Yeah. I mean, so you can look at, how many units you sold, and you can look at it as just, or you can really, like, if you close your eyes and you think about the amount of memories that are going to be created in those homes that you sold, how many dinners are they going to share at this dinner table together before their kids go to college? How many, times are they going to have in this house just full of happy memories before they choose, to go a different direction? So to me, I just had to reframe in my mind, what it is that I'm trying to do. Am I just trying to put food on the table? No, but it's obviously a necessity for me to do through this path. So it was a long journey where I was like, I don't want to sell real estate anymore because all I'm doing is, just trying to, convince these clients to buy this house. And
Right.
so I just changed my whole perspective around it. Instead of trying to be a, a salesman and things like that, of course, I came loaded full of information, knowledge, direction to help guide them to the appropriate step. But at the end of the day, it wasn't just a house they were buying. I mean, it was memories that they, were bound to create. And everything that encompasses, what is done inside of a home.
It's a big deal. It really is.
Yeah, it's huge.
Now, how has this changed your business besides from
Um,
the point of view? If
and so it's changed my approach, it's changed my demeanor, I think, in the business, and it's also changed like my expectation for the outcome, because I always expected people to go with me. I always expected, to be a top producer, and always expected to do these great things, and all that really matters. But what matters more is how you approach people. Are you talking to them as just a number
right,
for your day, or are you talking to them as a human who are also experiencing all these other life issues that you may not know about, and you just being a good person and talking to them without a goal in mind or expectation to be met, then you are, I think, doing your job good.
the hardest truth you had to face was
Hardest truth, I think, it kind of goes back to that, is knowing that they're just not like another. If I were to receive a call about someone wanting to buy or sell my home, how would I take that? How would I perceive that person's expectations for the call? It was really just reformatting everything that I have learned, because I was with KW as well. It's where I started off my business, and I recommend probably any agent to begin with KW, because it's a great institution to learn in and to kind of grow into the role that you're playing as a realtor. But more than a realtor, you are a person. And so it was really just the reformatting of how I want my business to look versus how I've been running it.
okay. Makes sense. Yeah, there's actually, if I remember correctly, at Keller Williams, they do have a pretty large group for wellness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
KW Wellness. Yep.
That you had to become extremely vulnerable in this whole process, as you are right now, when you open up pretty big to people you don't even know or never meet. How does that help you in building community and connecting with people and letting go of the shield that we all put up?
Yeah. So part of the Celebrate Recovery and Step Study program is, one, if you go to Celebrate Recovery, that's just one part of it, following the 12 steps, learning the 12 steps. But in Step Study, you really learn, not only what they are, but how they play a role in your recovery. And so this podcast, like the Sober Broker, brings everyone together, from felons to CEOs to pastors, because addiction does not discriminate. It can be in any shape or form, and there's tons of addictions to be had. I'm getting a lot of feedback from people, and I'm originally started, wanting to book only 4 shows a month, just like once a week, because I didn't want to
Right.
get overwhelmed. But truth be told, man, I've booked 18 shows for the month of
Wow.
February. And it's just because once I started being more vocal about it and putting word out there and requesting people to be in my show, more and more people wanted to speak up. And I realized, it's all about just getting started and doing something that you're passionate about. And so building community around sobriety is one of my biggest passions right now.
So let's talk about the show. Where can it be found?
Yeah, so I do a newsletter through Hoppy Copy, which is a really cool AI generating newsletter. And so generally tell, the application to, hey, help me write, a newsletter based around this. And, I'll send out the YouTube links through that. So if you want to get on, obviously, the newsletter, you share your email, we can, send you all the content. And I really just try to spread the word as much as I can through all these avenues that we've been blessed with the technological side. But all in all, the YouTube is going to be the best for getting, again, the full scope and hearing everyone's full story. Because just a little bit ago, I had someone who was, incarcerated for 3 years at the age of 18. And I mean, just hearing the different perspectives is really eye-opening for me.
Yeah, it's a great thing you're doing. It really
Thanks,
is.
Joe.
I really appreciate what you're doing, your efforts, and you're brave. I mean, it's for you to be out there speaking about your personal issues and what you've gone through. This is very brave of you. So, if somebody's listening who feels successful on the outside, they look like they're on the inside. What is the first honest step that you would encourage them to take?
Well, I would say that if you have kids, to think about their lives and how you live it. If they were living their life how you chose to live it, would you be 100% pleased with how they're doing it? And if you don't have kids, just honestly look at it from your parents' perspective, because that's the same perspective but just reversed. Your parents really wanted all the best for you, and they want you to grow up, be happy, fulfilled, purpose driven. And I would think that it's about what you get back from, that relationship. And I mean, you experience clarity, presence, high integrity, better relationships, and you don't have to necessarily blow up your life to start rebuilding it. You don't have to hit ground, bottom ground to be able to want to change. But I would say if you want to change, just start with one small step of getting up in the day, doing something that you're passionate and purposeful about. Don't just right into your day to day, because I feel like in the grand scheme of things, you lose yourself when you're just focused on A, B, and C. Obviously, there's a time to be focused on A, B, and C, but you can create this pocket of time to start the day where you're really dedicated on learning more about you, and either that being with your maker or just within yourself and meditating within yourself. And I would say that's the best place to start, because you're only going to understand yourself more by spending more time with yourself, not on your phone, texting other people, or anything like that. Even with like reading the Bible, for me, for example, like when I start the day, I try to read the Bible out of the actual Bible, not on my phone, because notifications pop up. You
Right.
get email reminders, text reminders, people texting you, calling. If you escape that and put that aside and just focus on what's in front of you, and trying to really make an intention to learn more about yourself and what made you you, then I think that's the best place to start.
Outstanding. Patrick, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was hugely valuable. Viewer, please subscribe. We're always having talented and smart and influential leaders like Patrick on the show. Patrick, again, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Joe. Happy
to be your best. Have fun.
Yeah.